All right, so we've gone over SQL for a few days now. And so what I'm going to do is I'm not really going to lecture exactly. I'm going to just kind of show you an example, and we'll write some queries, and I'll show you some slightly more advanced stuff that's more just for your information. So if you're struggling with SQL as it is, don't worry. You don't need to know this. And then I'll try to keep it short, and then we're going to have a group exercise. All right, so I want to share my screen. All right, so we've got here, we have a schema, which is fairly simple. So what I like to do first is turn this schema into something a little more visually helpful. So I'm going to go here to this app. I don't know if I can squeeze all this in, but let's see. Okay, so here's the the database for this particular application. So you've got three tables: app user, post, and comment. So I'm just going to go ahead and write this out. So app user, it's got an ID, which is a primary key. And we'll do post. It's also got an ID, which is a primary key, and comment, which as always has an ID of primary key. So can anyone tell me about this database, about these tables based on the schema?
It's like social media, possibly. It's a relational database.
Okay. Okay, good. So we could reasonably guess that this is the database for maybe like a blog or a social media application or something like that. So how are these tables connected? So we have these tables. How are they connected?
They're not connected at the moment.
Okay, good. They're not connected. They are connected in the schema.
So the comment table connects to both post and user through the post ID and user ID reference keys.
Okay.
The post table is connected to the app user using the user ID. And then it seems like app users like going to be used as the primary key to refer back to, I think.
Okay, good. So yeah. So let's talk about, first off, let's focus on the relationship between, let's say, app user and post. So what kind of relationship is that?
I would say maybe it would be a, I'm a little bit lost on this actually. I was going to ask a question, but I would think that each user could have multiple posts. So maybe it would be a one-to-many relationship, but I'm not sure which direction it actually goes.
Okay, good. So I think what we can say with a pretty high degree of certainty is that there is a relationship between app user and post. I mean, there's a direct relationship between app user and post. So we can see that post has a foreign key, which connects it to app user. So we have three basic kinds of relationships. We have one-to-one, one-to-many, and many-to-many.
So I'm thinking since the post is going to the user, the post can only have one user, so it would be a one-to-one.
Okay, good. Yeah, you're on the right track. So it is true that posts can only have one user. So because fields in a database are atomic, ideally, right? So you don't, I mean, you can in theory, but you don't really, you don't store arrays, right? So a post doesn't have an array of users or whatever, right? It just has one user. So one post has one user. So that much we can say for certain. So one post has one user. So we can go this way and say a post has one user. What about the reverse relationship?
In that case, since a user can have multiple posts, it would be a one-to-many.
Yeah, exactly. So there are no restrictions here on the number of posts that an app user. So for any one particular post, it has to have one user. But you could have lots and lots of different posts, and those posts could all have the same user because they can all have, they can all have a user ID of 5. You can have 30 posts and half of them could have a user ID of 5. So the relationship between post and user is one, a post can have one user and a user can have many posts. And we can, I think that's like, I always forget yeah, a user can have many posts. So we can represent that here in kind of somewhat standard notation with this crow's foot. So if we go from app user to post, there's a crow's foot. That means we can have one user can have many posts. And if we go from post to user, we have this one bar here. So that indicates that there's one. So a post can have one user. Okay, what about the relationship between, let's say, app user and comment?
App user can have many comments, but a comment can only have one app user.
Right. So it's similar to post. So a comment has an app user ID, just like post does. So we can say that has the same kind of relationship to app user. So an app user can have lots of comments, and a comment can only have one app user. Okay, are there any more relationships here?
Guess you'd want to type comments to posts as well, because you can make comments on posts.
Okay, so you can make a comment on a post. So what's the relationship between posts and comments?
One post to many comments, but only one post. It's kind of like the same thing. You can have a bunch of comments, but only one post.
Right. So a post can have many comments associated with it. So a given post can have lots and lots of comments because there's just a post ID here. So you can have a whole bunch of comments all floating around, and they can all, happen to have the same post ID. So a post can have lots of comments, and a comment can only have one post, or can only be associated with one post. Okay. So this is kind of the representation, one way of representing how these things are all connected. Are there any questions about that? All right. So let's see here. Got this. Yeah, I'm gonna take a screenshot real quick. All right, so we have our schema over here for reference. So now we can take a look here at this schema, and then we have some data that we can insert. There's a whole bunch of data here. So we're creating some users, and then we're creating some posts, and then we're creating some comments. So nothing too exciting. Does anyone notice anything slightly different about these insert statements? So
So it's a group of them?
yeah, basically, yes. Yeah, there's a group of them. So instead of saying insert in a post and then the columns and the values and then doing it one at a time and then repeating that, you can, this is just kind of a shorthand for the same thing. Okay, so I'm gonna, whoops.
I noticed in today's challenge, the way the data was organized there, instead of putting the parameters for the insert into statements, they just put default as the first value in the actual data.
Yeah.
I was trying to think of when there would be a time when it wouldn't just be default, when when you wouldn't want to do that.
Yeah, we can we can talk about that in a sec. So I don't want to spoil the surprise. So yeah, we'll
Okay.
exercise. Yeah, that's fine though. Yeah, it's good to yeah, I'm glad you're looking ahead at stuff. Okay, so let's go ahead and I'm going to create a database, and we'll call it blog. And then I'm going to create the schemas. So okay, looks like there are no errors there. PSQL blog, and then data. All right. So now I have my database and it's populated with stuff. So I want to run some queries. All right, so we got some queries here. Let's see, the first one is, yeah, we'll look at some of the data real quick. So we have Bob, Jane, Joe, and Sam. Those are users. So the first thing we want to do is we want to get all of Jane's post titles. So we have this user Jane. Her name is Jane, and she has a post that has a title. So we want to get all of Jane's post titles. These are the easy warm-ups.
Select title from post where.
Okay. So first off, let's just, maybe we can do it piecemeal. So so we know we need, Jane, we need title. So let's just go ahead and see if we can get Jane's information first. So select star from app user, and then if we want to get Jane. So the only thing we know about Jane is her first name right now. Okay, so let's get everything, since we don't know how to handle that. Let's do queries. So we get everything from the app user table. You can see ID, which is automatically generated, and then name and email. So now I just want to get Jane's information.
Her name equals Jane.
Okay. Okay, so what's the problem here? Let me zoom in.
Need single quotes.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Because I messed it up a lot of times.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So that's a good way. So this error message is not so helpful, like many SQL error messages. It's telling you that the column doesn't exist. So when you use double quotes, you're telling SQL that it's going to be a column. So that's the double single distinction in SQL. So yeah, so we need single quotes here. But anytime you get that column does not exist, check your quotes. Okay, so we got her. So we got Jane's information, and now let's get her posts. So let's not worry about, we'll still do select star, but so we want to get all of Jane's posts.
Select star from posts.
Okay,
Where user ID.
okay.
I can't see her user ID. Scroll up some.
Yeah, so so we don't know her user ID.
I thought we just got her information.
We did we did from a previous query, but that's kind of cheating, I guess. So we just know her name.
Delete the user ID and aware. So
Okay,
we're gonna have to join the tables if we're gonna have to get our name, huh?
Exactly, yeah.
Join, then we join on app user.
Okay, so join app user on,
App user ID.
okay, app,
Who's- What we call the app, what's the name of it? I don't remember what the name of, we called it in the app.
so we have the app user table, we have ID, name, and email.
Okay, so ID equals
Okay,
post dot user ID.
all right. So let's run this one and see what we get. So this gets us everything. So that's good. So now we have everything from app user and post. At least
Yeah, we-
everything.
We still need a where statement to specify Jane.
Okay,
Where,
Okay, so we know from looking at this table that Jane user ID is 2.
yeah, but we can't use that information directly.
Okay, so where,
where app user name equals Jane.
Yeah, so we
Yeah.
know her name, Jane, and we know that we can access this row right here. So where app user dot name equals.
Jane, that should get it.
Okay, cool. So we got these. So we're getting closer. So we only need her post titles.
And wait, app user equal Jane.
So we're
Select
getting,
post title.
yeah. So we're getting everything right now, star, where we only want the title.
Okay, I didn't hear that part. Okay. I didn't read the little thing at the top.
That's fine.
Okay.
Yeah. So now we got the query. So it's often, it's often a good idea. Sometimes you're going to get a query. It's going to be like, what do I even do? How do I start? So I find it's often good to try and make queries that will at least get you closer to where you're trying to go. And you can usually just tweak things and eventually you'll get at the actual query. Okay,
That's
good.
how I do it. I break it up into parts.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea. Okay, so we got her post titles. Let's do, we'll get the total. I'll just paste this here. So get the total posting participation by user. So the end result of this will be a table that has each user's name. So each user's name and then how many posts they have. So what, first off, before we do anything, what two tables, sorry, shouldn't have said that. So what tables are you gonna need for this query?
2 tables, app user and post.
Yes, so we're gonna need app user and post.
So if we're trying to find everything from posting participation, maybe select star from post
Okay,
to bring up every post.
let's do that. We have all the posts. And I can see that there's a lot of repetition, right? So like user 4 has a lot of posts, user 3 has a couple, user 2 has a couple, user 1 only has 1 post.
But I don't think we need to start, huh? We need to put some user ID, the keyword some.
Some, okay, right? So some,
We're gonna sum the user IDs, huh?
well, yeah, so we don't, so these user IDs, the actual numerical value is not important, it's arbitrary. It's just a unique reference. So the fact that this is 3 and this is 4 don't actually.
No, I was gonna sum how many times each one, like if it's 1, it's 1, if it's 3, is. Okay, I see what you're saying.
So do we want some, or is there another function?
Count.
Count.
There's a, count, so you
Count.
can count
could
from
count.
posts and then where, if you wanted to find a specific user.
Right.
We count the user ID.
Okay, we could do that. Count.
So what, count star, or what are you gonna count?
The number of times the user ID appears. And that should give us the total post, correct?
Okay, so let's try and run this query. So we get 9.
Okay, we haven't set the parameters yet, though.
Right. So what is that 9?
That's the total number of posts that have a user ID in it, whatever the user ID might be.
Right.
Right.
So we kind of want to take all of these user IDs and put them into little buckets, right? So we want 1 bucket for user ID number 1, 1 bucket, or actually we want them named ultimately, but we want 1 bucket per user.
So
there's a group by.
Right, okay,
you
good.
can use.
So we'll probably need group by. So select count, user ID.
Do we also want to join tables?
Yeah, so we are going to have to join. So good. So we're getting the elements. So we're going to have to we're gonna use count. We're gonna need to group by because we want to put things in buckets. And we're gonna need to join app user and post. Let's see.
We want to count at the beginning or at the end after we get the extra user.
Yeah, so if we want to do the group by, yeah, we're gonna have to do it right here. So we want, we'll do this for now. So name, account of whatever we get from, let's do app user, and then we're gonna need to join post. And how are we gonna join them? So how are app user and post connected?
App user's ID equals posts dot user ID.
Okay. Okay, so we're selecting this and we're joining. So let's see what this query gets us so far. Okay, must appear in the group by clause. Okay, so we're getting an error here and it's saying column app user.name must appear in the group by clause or be used in an aggregate function. So what kind of function is count?
Aggregate.
Yeah, it's an aggregate function, which means that we basically need a group by statement. So as we already know, so group by. And we're gonna group by, we'll just group by this one right here. Since we want everything, name, the name is the bucket that we want. So we're gonna group by name. Let's see what this gives us. We get the name and the count. This is not very useful to me. Can I change the name of count to number of posts?
Count star as number underscore
Okay.
post.
So I'll run this again. Okay, good. So I have this, let's say that it would be easier to read if the number of posts were in order.
Sort by,
Order by.
order by.
Okay,
That sounds better.
yeah. So it is sorting, but yeah, order by.
Do you want it ascending or descending?
And do you have to use number of posts because you named it number of posts now? Yeah.
So by default, it'll be ascending. So starting small, getting big. You can do it
Yes.
ascending. You can see the top poster first. All right, so we've, if, you know, for the purposes of the course, this is, you know, as complicated as you'll need to get. So if you can do stuff like this, then you're good. So now I'm gonna do some slightly more advanced stuff here.
Hey, Chad, really quick question.
Yeah.
I'm noticing that you haven't put semicolons at the end of the queries.
Yeah.
When do we know?
So
when we use
yeah,
them?
that you should really just put semicolons in. It'll depend on the implementation. So if I just have a single query here, it's gonna basically put that in for me. But if I have multiple queries, I'm gonna get an issue.
Awesome, thank you.
So I'd have to add in. All right, so Here we go. All right, so here's a question. What are the least popular posts? Meaning the posts that have the fewest comments. So what tables are we going to need to use?
Post and comment.
Okay. So we're going to need to use these two tables. What are the least possible? So if it'll be difficult to answer this question, but maybe we can,
Well,
answer a similar question.
If you did it like number of posts and you just sorted not descending, ascending, then so select.
Okay.
Okay, someone jump in now. Select.
Account again.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you
yes.
want title?
Okay. So can you just tell me what you're thinking before we write the query?
I would be thinking you want to know the title,
Okay.
and you're going to want to do a count on how many comments per title.
Right.
So select title,
Okay.
and then we're also, well, we'll get to that in a second. Well, no, I guess now. Oh, and then where do I connect over? Oh,
Well, let's just go ahead. First off, let's go ahead and just look at both tables. So we'll just do select
Okay.
style from post, join, comment. How are they connected?
on ID equals post ID.
Okay, so here is the post and here is the comment. So what we want to do is we want to see the least popular post. Maybe we can just kind of eyeball it here. You can't always do that in a database, but so you can see post ID 1, 2, 3, 4. So it looks like the most
Post ID 9,
9.
and the least is 2
Okay. Are there
and
any
4.
posts that don't have any comments?
Oh,
Yeah, most of them. It's like 3, 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah. So where are those?
the post ID would be null.
Yeah, it wouldn't have one. Yeah, exactly. So we're just doing inner joins, and that's great. That's that's really all you need to know. But there are other kinds of joins. And if we do a left join, the left join will give us everything. So it'll give us everything on the left side, which is basically the first table that you mentioned. So we're going to get all of the posts no matter what. Every single post is going to show up no matter what, because we're doing a left join. And it's going to line up. It's going to line up what it can, and what it can't, it's just going to be nulls. So we just have a bunch of essentially null comments here.
So then you want to show the least popular ones. So you would you just basically want to print out. We would only need, well, yeah. You would just do where comment dot post ID is null, and that would be your least popular posts.
Yeah. So I'm gonna, so the the way we're gonna have to solve this problem is gonna be a little different than what we've been doing before. So you can think of a SQL query as basically a function that takes a table, or potentially multiple, but let's just say it takes a table and then returns a table. So I write a SQL function, I give it a table, and then it returns me a table. So if every SQL query that I write takes a table and returns a table, then that means that I can write a SQL query on the result of another SQL query. So
Do we need to get to where we have a table that counts the comments for each post so that we can then apply condition?
yeah. So because if we knew, so the issue is the first thing we have to find out, and we have to find it out dynamically, is what is the least, what is the lowest number of comments that any post has, right? Because if I have a database and every post has a bunch of comments on it, then the post with the least comments, it might be 10. And I could have another, or maybe I add some more data, or it's a different database, and it could be 0, it could be 1. So I have no idea what that actual number is. So I need to find out what that lowest number is. And then once I have that lowest number, then I can filter, I can write another query that uses that to filter. So let's see. So let's run this query real quick. So here I have all of the, I'm just grabbing the title, but this is from the posts, and then I have the count. This is how many comments each post has, and I'm using a left join, so these nulls are basically getting cast to zeros, kind of automatically. So you might not be able to count on that, but that's what's happening. So that's why we're getting zeros now, because we did a left join. So we have now a table. Again, this is the table. So I give it a table and I'm returning a table. So I now have this, this table doesn't exist in my database exactly, but I can use it in another query. So I count, it might be easier to see. So order by let's go order by, just so it's a little easier to see. So I can see that 0 is the least thing that I have.
So you said earlier we need to create a table that we can call another query on. So that's the table right there that we now need to query that table.
Yes,
That will-
exactly. So we're gonna write another query that will query this one. So you can use parentheses to do that. So I'm basically gonna kind of wrap around this. And so I'm gonna do select min see.
think your parentheses is backwards there, isn't? Is
Oh,
that what that?
yes, sorry. Okay, so now I have another table, and this table, just has this one value here, but my initial query, so this inner query gets me this table. And I can use that table as input to another query, which is right here. And that query gets me this. So now I have the number for least popular posts. So at this point, I'll just to save some time, let's see.
Yeah, quick question.
Yeah.
The column name didn't change to as title count. Is that because it's got to be, you've got to put as title count up above?
Yeah, so I'm actually, this title count is an alias for this whole table.
Oh, okay.
So I do title count, that's the table, which this table is now called title count and the count there.
So if we wanted to rename that specific column to something else, we could put it up there. Yeah, right there. And
Yeah.
just name it. Okay.
So as
Awesome. Cool. Thank you.
okay, so this is where it gets a little more hairy here. Have this over. Got messed up parentheses somewhere, I think. Let's see, subtitle. Once I figure this out, I'll explain it real quick. Having count equals.
I think it's right there, right? That you need another no.
Sorry. It's over. Okay. Okay, so there's a couple ways you could do this, but yeah, this inner query here. So this inner query is giving us this first table basically, and then we have another query which is going to get the minimum. So we'll have this initial table which is going to have all of our titles and accounts. And then we have another query, which is just going to get the minimum from this column, which is, like a derived column. This isn't in our database directly. So it's going to get that 0 from there. And then we're going to write another query, which is basically like the original query. So we're going to get the title and then the number of comments, except we're going to do this check. So having, can anyone tell me what having does? So having is like where, but it's for aggregates. So because we're using, sorry?
Oh, I was gonna say that looked it up. Filters groups on returned rows. So
Yeah. So it will filter, it'll filter aggregates. So we have a count right here, which is an aggregate function, which means we're gonna have a group by. So we have buckets and we're compressing information from different rows. We're collapsing rows together into, buckets or a smaller number of rows. And then instead of a where clause to filter, we use having. So having the count that equals 0. So all of this stuff is just to get us that 0. And if, depending on our database, that could be a 1 or a 5 or 100 or whatever. It's just the lowest number of comments for any post. So we're getting this information dynamically. We could write this query separately and get that information and then write it down on a piece of paper and then write a second query that uses that. But if we do it like this, then it's all, if this were an automated process or something, you wouldn't want to stop and have to intervene. So this takes care of everything all at once dynamically. So no matter what the data can change, so we don't have to hard code like a 0 or a 5 or whatever. So we're going to get that 0 dynamically, that lowest number, whatever it happens to be. Then we're going to say if it equals this count. And then that gives us the titles, and then they're all 0. So we could probably just get rid of this because we just care about the titles. So this is more complicated than what you'll really need to do for the class, but I just wanted to expose you to that. So if you're struggling, don't worry about it. But you can do a lot of complex things with SQL, and it's similar to the things that we've learned before. Again, it's like a query takes a table and returns a table. Okay. Yeah, are there any questions about that? All right, I will stop sharing.